The Solo Coach Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Solo Coach Podcast. If you've been here before as a guest, as a listener of the show, thank you very much for being with me and staying with me. And if it's your very first time listening to the show, then thank you for your listen. Great to have you here. I hope you enjoy the show. I'm always open to feedback and love reading the comments on all the various platforms. So if you like the show, leave a comment, leave a rating. If you didn't like the show, contact me directly to let me know what you didn't like and how I could make it better for next time. So today I want to start with a confession, which is I am very good at giving up. And persistence isn't something that's always come very naturally to me. So if you ask anyone who I work on cars with, my friends who are listening, they know you know who you are. Very often we might get to the point where I feel that we've bitten off more than we can chew, and I will always vote to play it safe and just take the car to a garage, admit failure, admit defeat, and let them deal with it. Thank you very much, garage. Let me know when it's fixed. And my friends know that. And I deliberately work on cars with people who are the other way inclined and will be very keen and courageous and brave to give it a go and see where they get to. So initially we're working on car servicing, then minor fixes, and then we got into buying crash damaged cars where the airbags had deployed and bumpers were broken, lights were broken, wheels were damaged, and we worked on them to fix them and, breathe some new life back into them. And every single time we've got a car, my first thought has been, oh my goodness, head in hands, we've bitten off more than we can chew. I feel overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. Oh, what have we done? But every time, my friends who I do it with have been like, it's okay, don't worry, it's fine. We don't know everything we need to know to get it done. We're going to encounter challenges and obstacles on the way, no doubt. But we lean into it and we try it and we see where we get to. And every time we do have some unforeseen, anyone who's worked on cars will know that there's always unforeseen obstacles and challenges and things go wrong, and a clip breaks or a screw shears off, or the part that you bought isn't the part that you thought you needed, or maybe that you were sent the wrong part, so then you have to wait and get the right part. So there's lots of assembling, deassembling, reassembling, and lots of back and forth. It can be quite messy, literally, figuratively, messy in all ways, but there's always a sense of achievement at the end of the day when we manage to achieve the thing we set out to achieve. So to introduce this episode, I want to talk about how the best things that have happened to me in life and the best things that are happening to me right now are happening through the power of persistence. And persistence for me is like a muscle that I'm exercising at the gym, and the more I do it, the better I get at it, but it still feels relatively weak, as it's not something that's always come naturally to me. So to begin with, I want to tell you about my public speaking journey. Way back when I worked in IT, the leaders I looked up to the most were the ones who could hold your attention. They could talk to you for minutes or even hours and you'd be interested, inspired. They'd have a vision. You'd want to get behind them. You know the sort. And if they're listening, shout out to you, fabulous leader and supreme leader, if you will. I've always seriously looked up to people who can speak well and inspire and are funny and engaging, and they're just good communicators. And I always thought, wow, one day imagine to be able to communicate like that. And that led me to watching TED Talks, and I spent a year back in around 2021, post-pandemic, watching a TED Talk a day with my housemate Ruth. And we thoroughly enjoyed it, and we used to have a nice little discussion over coffee after each TED Talk every morning to talk about what we enjoyed. And it might have been about what the topic of the speech was, or the way the speaker delivered it, their body language, and essentially give them a little mini speaker evaluation, if you will. And then that's led me on to creating a podcast. So creating a podcast, when I decided to create the Solo Coach podcast, it was after a 6-month stint as a professional storyteller for a company called Animas, which I've spoken about before. And I was interviewing coaches for their YouTube channel to tell the success stories of people who are affiliated with the business. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I got quite comfortable being in front of the camera and loved asking questions and prying for more details and basically telling the stories of the people who have been affiliated with the coaching company Animas. And off the back of that, having always listened to podcasts and been into podcasts, I thought, imagine if I created my own podcast and did like an extension of what I did for Animas, and maybe even threw a few solo episodes in there as well, a bit like today's. So what I did know for sure was that it wouldn't be perfect from the beginning. It wouldn't be fantastic and amazing from day one. And the biggest obstacle, the hardest thing to do, was to start to record and release one episode, to figure out how to record, what app I might need, what kit I might need to record it, how on earth to upload it to a platform, what to call it. There were so many obstacles, it would have been really easy to give up. And I put it off and put it off and put it off. And then come January this year, January 2025, I thought, right, now I have to just do this. I have to make it happen. Because in order for it to get good, in order for it to get great, I have to start somewhere. And the chances are it's going to be a bit rough around the edges, a bit rough and ready, and distinctly not great when I begin, which is what it was. Episode 1, it didn't have a jingle. It was quite rigid. I partly read from my notes as I delivered it. I felt a bit awkward. But the key thing I did was I did it. I recorded it. And then I released it, knowing that it's not perfect, but knowing that when I looked back on it 6 months later, or when I do look back on it a year later in January 2026, the changes and the growth I will have experienced, the difference hopefully, between January 2026's episode and January 25's episode, 56 episodes later, will be huge. It will be massive, because in each episode, maybe you can't always tell, but there's always an incremental improvement. And I get to hear feedback from people, which is a super valuable tool. And I watch the episodes back, sometimes with no audio, or sometimes just listen to them with no video, to understand how I can improve my body language, my background, my audio quality, my video quality, the quality of my questions, how scripted or unscripted my solo episodes sound. Incidentally, for anyone wondering, I always have some notes with me for an aide-memoire, but I don't have a word-for-word script because I just love to go off script. So with the podcast, the key thing was the incremental improvements and embracing failure and persisting, and knowing that some people would listen to it and not enjoy it, knowing that I would listen back to some episodes and cringe, knowing that there'd be things I'd forgotten about, missed out, or maybe said incorrectly. Lots of ums, lots of ers, couple of awkward silences, me mixing up my words like I did there, or forgetting what I was going to say. I knew that imperfection was something I was going to have to embrace in order to get to where I am today, and hopefully to keep continuing episode on episode, such that maybe from episode 24 to 25 you might not see any improvement, but when you look at episode 24 to 34, or 34 to 44, or to 104 perhaps, there will be a huge notable improvement. So part of my public speaking journey, which the podcast has led me to, is something called Toastmasters. I've been a member now of Toastmasters since March this year, a guy called Chris Wilson, who runs a company called Speak and Serve. He's been on my podcast as a guest. He was instrumental in introducing me to Toastmasters, this thing I'd never heard of, this strange, unusually named club that doesn't involve toasting or alcohol at all. But or tapping forks on wine glasses to give a toast. It's not like that at all. It's a public speaking class. It's international. I believe it was started in the USA in the 1920s and it's now gone international. It's blown up, and there's 3 of these clubs in Leeds. Little did I know. I've lived in Leeds for over 10 years and I had no idea. And I started attending as a guest. I thought, wow, this is a space full of people who are self-development junkies. They want to get better. They're into growth and personal development. They read the kind of books that I read, and they are just my way inclined. So I thought, massive tick, great environment. And also the people at the front were being really vulnerable, and they were giving speeches, and they were failing a little bit, struggling and sometimes forgetting their words, mixing up or freezing at the front. But the feedback that the whole room was giving them was so unbelievably positive and supportive and constructive, and I thought, wow, this is a recipe for success if ever I've seen one. So I decided to join, and since then I've now given 2 speeches. I gave my icebreaker a few weeks ago where I talked about my experiences of being in a huge storm in New Zealand. It was a cyclone called Cyclone Gabrielle battering the farm that we were in, and my experiences of being scared and panicked and not knowing what to do or how to respond. And then the following 2 weeks, the outbreak, the destruction on the farm, the destruction in the whole country, and the complete and utter chaos that was New Zealand back in February 2023. And the point being of that speech was that I learned so much about myself. I learned how much I was capable of. I learned that the best things come from the worst moments, and that travel truly broadens the mind. And I did things I never knew I'd do before. But without delivering that speech, that was my icebreaker, and it went really well. It went spectacularly well, and I got great feedback. But I knew that I had a lot more to give. And what I really wanted to do was what I did literally last night, which was give my first ever coaching themed speech at Toastmasters. So this was the first of my official pathway, which is visionary communication through Toastmasters. And the idea of last night's purpose, my assignment, was to deliver a speech with purpose. So I know that I've got an event coming up in a couple of weeks where I have a 20-minute presentation to give. And the hardest part of that presentation is involving a whiteboard. And it's going to be a live coaching activity, a live demonstration of transformative coaching, which is what I now do for a living as the solo coach. So yesterday I was nervous. I was unsure how it would go, because it was so fundamentally important to me that I did a good job and that I got good feedback and that I learned something from the experience, because this is what I want to do. I feel driven and called towards public speaking. I love it. I feel electric when I'm up there. I'm so inspired and I'm so moved by great speakers, and I really, more than anything, want to be a great speaker myself. I want to inspire groups of people. I want to energize, encourage and motivate groups of people to create positive change in the world. That's the mission behind my business. That's the mission behind my speaking. It's the mission behind everything that I do, to create a positive impact in the world through fantastic, transformative conversations. So I went into the speech. I went into the Toastmasters room at 7 p.m. last night at the Novotel in Leeds. A little bit nervous, and knowing that there was no further preparation I could do other than go into the bathroom and check that my voice still worked and clear my throat and do a little high five in the mirror and say, David, you got this. I literally did those things. It was a basic form of priming. And then I went into the room. There was one speech before mine, which was fantastic. And then I was welcome onto the stage. The Toastmaster shook my hand and the room went dead quiet. And I stood at the front and I introduced my speech with, "Coaching has changed my life." I gave a brief introduction talking about why that's the case, but then I quickly moved into my activity, which was what was called the skill will matrix on a whiteboard, which was all about, it's the very first coaching activity that my coach Russell did with me, and it's all about figuring out what you're good at and what you're really energized by, and when you're playing to your strengths, and then what you're good at but not energized by, or what you're really not good at, so you're bad at and you're really de-energized by, or what you're not perhaps good at yet but you're really energized by. And it was a process of taking people through these 4 quadrants, getting the audience interaction to fill in some suggestions for each quadrant, and then afterwards presenting everyone with 3 key questions to go away and think on. The presentation went really well. I felt so energized, I felt so electric, I felt so happy and so honoured to be talking about coaching in front of a room full of people for the first time ever. And at the end of my speech, my feedback from my evaluator was fantastic. It was, "You stood up there and you smiled continually for 7 minutes." We don't see that. That's rare. We haven't seen that before. Someone who loves their topic that much that they can't stop grinning like a Cheshire cat. And then my feedback was also that I held the space really well. And the activity, I went through it quite quickly, possibly too quickly, because I was conscious of time. And the feedback was that it was a very ambitious thing to do in my very first speech. And despite that, I pulled it off really well, and it was a resounding success. And then someone came and saw me afterwards, who's a commercial manager, and she said, "David, that was so good. I want to do that activity with my team tomorrow. I'm going to do that with them in the morning. I think that will be super empowering and inspiring for my team." And I thought, wow, to have had that much impact, and then for someone to say that they're going to do it with their team, and then for the whole room to vote me out of 3 speeches last night, 2 of which were delivered by 2 other Toastmaster members who have been members for over 10 years. Last night I won Best Speaker of the evening. I was voted as Best Speaker. For anyone listening to the audio, I was just pointing to my award, which I've put on my pin board behind where I stand. I didn't know that was going to happen last night. I certainly didn't think I was going to be voted Best Speaker. And I genuinely didn't know whether it would fall flat and whether my audience interaction activity, my coaching activity, would get no interaction and would just be 7 minutes of awkwardness before I gave in and sat down. I had no idea how it was going to go. Genuinely. I've never practiced it before. It was the first time. I did it last night, less than 24 hours ago. But it worked. And it got me thinking about the power of persistence, the power of taking feedback on board, but the power of persisting and not giving in, and of embracing imperfection. Because when you do something for the first time, when I do something for the first time, it's never very good. In fact, it's usually quite crap. So doing something for the first time, embracing that it's not going to be perfect, and then doing it again, but making it slightly better. Not 100% better, not necessarily even 10% better, but 1% better. There's a guy called Dave Brailsford who is responsible for lots of changes in the Tour de France, the cycling event. Happens every year in France. And his strategy is something called marginal gains, which is looking at the cyclists, the cycling, the event, looking at the Tour de France from every perspective and looking at what really marginal, tiny little improvements can be made in order to get the cyclists feeling more comfortable and to get them fitter and sitting more comfortably and more aerodynamically on the bike, to get the bikes running a little bit more efficiently, to get the whole process of getting the cyclists to the event, looking after the cyclists during the event, getting them to the end of the event, more like a bit slicker, a little bit more efficient, a little bit smoother. Now, he doesn't try and reinvent the wheel, and his changes aren't huge. On the contrary, his changes are tiny, down to the level of the temperature and humidity that the van that is the team van where people travel from event to event and where the bikes are stored overnight. It's these levels of immense detail which you'd assume is kind of you could ignore it because it'll make no difference, negligible. You'd assume these things were negligible, but Dave Brailsford realised that they're not negligible, because every small little tiny weeny little change added up, a bit like compound interest on your savings in your bank account, it makes a difference in the long term. It might not make a huge difference overnight, and it might not be any one of these minor little changes that lead to a huge revelation and a huge step up, but it's the compound pounding, as Ed Milet calls it. It's the repeated result of following the process and continuing to move forward, continue to chip away at your goal. So in my in context of public speaking, it's continuing to get another podcast episode out, and another one, and another one, an interview and a solo one, an interview and a solo one, to keep it going again and again and again, to listen to people's feedback, to take it on board, to evaluate myself with an eye for detail. What little things could I change to make it next time? To make it better, to make it more engaging, to make it more enjoyable, to make me feel more comfortable while I'm here in front of the camera, to make the image a bit clearer, to make the audio quality a bit better. What little tiny things can I keep doing to keep making the podcast better? And similarly, going to Toastmasters, what small changes can I make to my body language, to my appearance, to my voice, to my volume, to my pitch, to my speed of speaking, to my use of the pause? You get the idea. So I wanted to share with you, very hot off the press, what my public speaking journey has entailed, and I am by no means where I want to be yet. I have a huge, very ambitious vision to be on a TED Talk, TED stage one day, and I will tell you more about that in an upcoming episode, which is all about creating your and defining your future vision. I'm going to tell you about my future vision, but the short version is I do have an ambition to be a great public speaker, professional public speaker, and to one day deliver a speech on a TED stage. And then I want to sort of start to bring this episode to a conclusion by saying, if you're considering giving up, if you're really struggling with persistence, if you're saying, well, what you've said, that's all well and good, David, but I'm really struggling, and the thing I'm doing is now not working, and I'm ready to give up, I'm keen to give up, I want to give up and I want to try something else instead. Firstly, I hear you, I feel you, and I've been there many times myself, particularly this year with the journey of running my own business, trying to be marketing, sales, finance, working on my business, promoting it at networking events, talking about it, having a podcast, writing marketing posts on social media, gathering testimonials, developing an offer, a product, pricing it accordingly, and then actually working in my business, so delivering the coaching, doing the thing, doing the doing, meeting my clients at their house or mine, meeting them virtually, delivering the coaching sessions, getting them great outcomes, meeting them where they're at, ensuring that they feel supported, listened to, heard, understood, making sure that they've paid on time, making sure I've sent them the correct invoice with the correct details, ensuring that I've responded to their messages in good time when they message me between sessions. I could keep going and going. There's so many tasks involved in running your own business, and so many things I haven't done before and I'm doing for the first time, and it's an uphill learning curve. Every day's a school day, and no matter how good I get, I still realise that there's so many things that I'm not good at yet, and I'm nowhere near as good as I need to be, and it is food for imposter syndrome. It feeds imposter syndrome, and it also feeds the will and the urge to give up. There's a million reasons that I can think of right now why giving up would be a great option, but the reasons for keeping going are more important and matter more, because the work I'm doing, it's making a difference. It's making a difference to how I feel. It's fulfilling, it's rewarding, it's enjoyable. I feel like I'm right where I belong. And my clients are getting great results. They're giving me fantastic feedback. They're telling me it's the best conversation they've ever had. It's the best conversation they've had this month. You've saved my passion. You've saved my business. You've saved my marriage. And someone said not that long ago, the work that we've done together, you and me, David, in a large part has saved my life, because his life was going in an incredibly negative direction, and by working together we 180'd it and changed the direction of his life, and he's now absolutely freaking thriving. And we still keep in touch. We don't work together anymore. We finished the work that we're doing together, but we still keep in touch. Every few weeks we have a little call, a little check-in. The point is, it matters, and the point is, giving up would be so easy, but persisting is what I need to do right now. And if you are also considering giving up, I urge you with every fibre of my being to pause and consider for a moment these 5 questions. Number 1, what are you set to gain by giving up? Would it give you time back? Would it give you guaranteed income? Let's just acknowledge that by giving up what you're doing and doing something else, there's going to be some benefits, or else it wouldn't be appealing. You wouldn't be considering it. Let's look at what the benefits might be of giving up. Let's create a space for them. Let's hear them out. Let's acknowledge them. Let's write them down or call them out. Number 2 is, what have you got to gain by persisting? So even for just a little longer, what might you gain by keeping going? Number 3 is, do you really need to quit? Do you really need to give up right now? Or do you just need a break? Do you just need a rest? Have you been burning the candles at both ends? Have you burnt your passion out? The flame of your passion, has it been extinguished temporarily, hopefully? Have you been working every hour of every day? Have you never been switching off? I've got a whole episode, released it a couple of weeks ago, about how to switch off and why it matters. And it's so hard, speaking from someone who really struggles to switch off. Is it that you've been too close to the coalface and you need to take a step back? Because by taking a break, you might realise that you don't want to quit, you don't want to give up after all, but what you really needed was a break. Or by taking the break, you might realise that actually giving up and changing paths is not giving up at all. It's the right thing for you right now. But decisions made when you're tired, frustrated, stressed, hungry, wound up tightly, decisions made when emotion is running thick and strong, when emotion is running the show and logic has kind of gone out the window, typically are the worst decisions. It's the worst time to make decisions. The bad decisions I've made in life are when emotion was dominating how I was feeling versus logic and being able to make the decision from a place of rationality. Not being complete. Emotions are present, but emotions aren't completely dominating the whole show. So number 3 was, do you need to quit or might you just need a break? Question 4, big one. Who could help you right now at this time of need? Who could you speak to tell them how you're feeling? If you're feeling stuck, trapped, unfulfilled, stuck between a rock and a hard place, stuck between a pillar and a post, ready to scream, wanting to pull your hair out, so frustrated and wound up, who could you talk to? Is it a friend? Is it a partner? Is it a colleague? Is it a manager? Or is it a coach? Do you need to talk to someone who's completely outside of that, of your systems, outside of your relationships, outside of someone who has no stake in your life, someone who has no ulterior agenda, someone who has only just met you, that has no relationship to the decisions you make? So there's no consequences on them of the decisions that you will make, whether you decide to keep the business, sell the business, stay in the job, change jobs, stay in the career, change careers, stay in the relationships, leave the relationships, spend the money, save the money. By talking to a coach, perhaps it might enable you to see things from a different perspective. Perhaps the questions that a coach like myself would ask you might provoke some insight, might provoke some thought, might help you realise that there's something you hadn't considered before. Or perhaps, typically when you're stuck between option A or option B, when you think you've only got two choices, there's always a third choice, and it might not become clear yet. A coach can help you figure out what that third choice is, what that alternative left field option might be, and maybe that's the right one for you. And it's always better to have three options than to just be stuck between one or the other. That feels like an ultimatum. That feels like a horrible place to be. That feels like being cornered and trapped. Whereas having three options feels more liberating. It feels more doable, and it's more appealing. I don't know about you, but it is for me. And question number 5, if you're considering giving up, considering throwing in the towel, considering calling it a day, I would urge you to pause and consider. If you persisted and if you finished what it is that you're working on or working towards, put yourself in that position as though what you've done, you've persisted, you've seen it through, you've weathered the storm, you've rode the wave, and you've got to the end of it, and you've nailed it, you've sorted it, you've achieved it, you've got the thing you wanted. How would you feel? How would it feel to have that thing that you've been working so hard towards getting, that you've been suffering and going through pain to try and achieve, to do, to get, to acquire, to make happen, to turn into reality? And let me ask you this. Would that feeling there, would it make the pain and suffering of today feel worth it? Feel justified? Would the feeling that you'll get when you complete the thing that you're trying to complete and finish and do, would the feeling be so good that it would make the temporary short-term pain that you're going through now feel worth it and necessary? And would the good feeling exceed the negative feeling that is now? Would it outrank it? Would it blow it out of proportion? Because what I've found is that when you go through suffering, when you feel the pain and the difficulties and the hardship of doing something really, really tough, and when you're right in the thick of it thinking, do you know what, I want to give up and throw the towel in because I'm hating this, I'm so frustrated by it. If you can see it through to the end, then the outcome will make it worth it. But that's with a huge caveat to say it needs to be the right thing that you're working on at the right time in the right way. And it might not be the thing itself that's causing you all the pain and suffering and feelings of hatred and resentment towards it. It might be the way you're approaching it. I know the way I've approached things in my life has often been very much suboptimal and could have been a lot better. And in hindsight, I could have done things much better and achieved better outcomes, and it would have been less painful for me. My mother always says I learn all my lessons the hard way, and it has certainly felt like that at times. But again, going back to number 4, who could help you at this time of need? Who could you speak to? Because perhaps by speaking to someone like myself, by speaking to a coach, it might be that you can start to see the wood for the trees and start to work out a better way of approaching the challenge that you're facing, a better way of weathering the storm in order to get what you're trying to achieve, to get to the end, to get to the result and the outcome, to get to the finish line quicker, easier, and less painfully. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd also love to hear your stories about challenges and journeys that you've been on and when you've had to persist and what that's led you to achieving. I'm always inspired, and I'm always looking for the next podcast guest. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
The Solo Coach Podcast.